And I would say that the problem that we have in Europe is that since we don't look at there, so we don't look at them, when we look at them, it's kind of too late. So they are very busy, playing in the local market. By the time they decide to come to Europe, they are already huge giants such as SmartFit or WellHub.
Hello and welcome back to Hashtag Fitness Industry. My name is Andreas Bechler and I'm your host, author, and consultant for the fitness market. In our last episode, 1 month ago, we took a deep dive into the Spanish-speaking giants of Latin America like Mexico, Argentina, and Colombia. But we left one big player out of the picture the last time because I would say it deserves its own stage. Today we are completing the map of South America and talking about Brazil. Brazil, I would say, isn't just a market. It's an exporter of global fitness trends, many big companies coming from there. And it's also a home to some of the largest fitness company on this planet. But I'm not an expert in this market, as you perhaps already heard in the last episode. So again, I invited a real expert for the region to help me out with that. And I'm happy to have in front of me Martin Saldaño Krogslund from Fitlink. Hi, Martin.
Hey, Andreas, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, Martin, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here. I already said it, your colleague Matthias already was with me in the last episode. We take a look at the Latin American fitness market without Brazil. Today we want to complete the continent with the look at the Brazilian market. But before we do that, could you briefly introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your background and of course also about Fitlink?
First of all, thank you for having me here. Thank you also for having Matthias. As you said, I was born and raised in Latin America, to be more specific, in Argentina, the neighbor of Brazil. Came to Europe many years ago, over 10 years ago, and I always kept good contact with both continents, developed professionally basically in both. And at some point, I realized that Matthias had a similar experience. We were always good friends from each other, and we wanted to connect what we knew that existed in some countries and didn't exist in others. Every once in a while, I make the joke about, you can visualize it with food. So you have some food in some countries that you don't have in the other ones. And when you work so many years in different regions in the fitness industry, you realize that something similar is happening there. And you miss products, you miss services, you miss solutions in Germany that are great in Spain, you miss solutions that are amazing in Portugal but are not being known or applied in Italy. And therefore we decided to start building Fitlink to connect companies, to connect markets, and do not stay only in the connection, but also to help to build up the commercial infrastructure of companies who want to develop this product in a new market. And it's a lovely activity what we do. I enjoy it a lot.
Yeah, thank you very much for your introduction. Yeah, whoever wants to perhaps also meet with you can do that at the FIBO. Yeah, and you're also having a big kind of workshop or something like that with the Latin American market community and also the Spanish and Portuguese people from the fitness market. So whoever is interested in that can just take a look at the show notes and will find a connection to that and can perhaps participate if they like to. But we nowadays want to talk about, like you said, the big neighbor of your home country. We want to talk about Brazil. Yeah, when I think of Brazil, and from everything I know, of course, the very much European perspective on it, I think of Brazil as the perhaps kind of second largest fitness market in the world, at least by numbers of club, as far as I know. But how is the market currently structured? Is it like the European market? It's a high volume, low cost chains that are mainly there, or is it more boutique style, or perhaps even more small kind of gyms in the favelas? Or how do I have to think about this market? What is the right picture of it?
Yeah. I would say that the right picture is not to try to compare it. It's a very different market. So if you try to look at Brazil comparing it to Argentina, you will fail. If you try to compare Brazil to Europe and Germany, you will fail. It's not it will not develop in the direction of being like the German market. It will not develop in the direction of being like other markets. It's a huge market itself with its own characteristic. As you said, if we're talking about size, in Brazil live more than 214 million people, which is two Brazilians per person in the DACH region. Uh, so for every German-speaking person, you have two Brazilians, and this brings the whole market to a new category. But it's not only about size. You have also different economical and sociocultural background, which develops in this very different ecosystem. As you said before, it has the largest amount of gym, or one of the largest amount of gyms, because the culture is very sporty. We also see it in the Olympic Games, or yeah, in the World Cups. So it's a very sporty culture with huge amount of gyms, but still the profitability of every single one of these gyms is way behind most countries, or most European countries. Yeah, so it's the second country in the number of gyms, but in terms of profitability, it's way behind. So it's different. So you shouldn't, or we shouldn't, in this conversation think, okay, how do I project Europe into Brazil? We simply need to see it as something different.
Okay, very interesting. But perhaps when let's get a little bit deeper into the typical gym. So if I, for example, decide, let's say I'm in Rio or somewhere in Brazil, and I want to go into a gym. So what I have to expect if I go through the door of the gym, how would it look like?
Well, since you have, once again, I think at some point we need to change the view of size, but it plays a role here too. You have so many gyms, you will find whatever you want to find. Yeah, probably you will feel at home with a Smart Fit, which is a equivalent solution to McFit. And literally, I was there in Latin America and going to those gyms. You can enjoy very similar structures. Yeah, but you can also go to other type of gyms. So as you say, some boutique solutions that are also there, and they are enormous in the amount. And you will also find this longevity trend, which is getting very big, and a lot of connection also with wellness. So of course you have thousands of amazing hotels in Brazil, and depending on what you want to find, yeah, you will see very different stuff, and always very impressive if you come from Europe.
Okay, interesting. So it seems like I think you could say that Brazil isn't just following trends, yeah, like you said, as it's not like they're so much influenced from the outside. They're more like their own ecosystem with their own trends, and perhaps, and that gets me to my next question, perhaps even exporting them.
Mhm.
So when we, for example, look at the massive global players we have from Brazil, yeah, like a SmartFig or especially Wellhub, yeah, if we know it, Wellhub, the formerly Gym Pass, I mean, especially as a German, we now should know it very well by
Mhm. Mhm.
buying Urban Sports Club, and now Urban Sports Club getting part of the Wellhub company. So we see there are really big and massive players of the international fitness market located or founded in Brazil. But why is that? Why is Brazil or why seems Brazil a place where this kind of big fitness companies are getting founded, are getting scaled? Is it just a specific Brazilian way that is running so good in the international fitness market? Or what perhaps I'm missing that makes this thing work so good, what comes from Brazil in all over the world?
Well, I wouldn't say that we are missing something. It's more that our attention doesn't go there. So it's been a couple of months in Latin America, as you know, and Latin Americans have almost no idea what's going on in Germany or in German-speaking countries. Yeah, so for them, for many people in Latin America, it's all about Europe, and you see a couple of news, but you are very focused on your own things. And I wouldn't say that. we don't see much about them. It's just we don't put attention on what they're doing. And what you have there is an immense internal market, so they can iterate solutions and or their business models a lot before they need to export something. So this is, for example, the case of SmartFit that you were explaining, or other solutions that are also there. You have this huge amount of gyms to which you can provide a service, compete with other local competitors. If you are producing goods, you are well protected of imports, which is something that plays a role. You're also a bit of well protected with language and how the market behaves. I was talking with people from Argentina and Chile. They were saying they are afraid of going into Brazil. So talk a lot with Argentinians who say they prefer to go to Spain. Of course, you speak the language, you understand things faster, than to go to Brazil, which could be the natural neighbor. So you have a couple of reasons there why the market is a bit protected. So it protects its industry quite well. You also have still as a good Latin American country, lower salaries, which allows companies to get a lot of talent there, which will work and will be more efficient than hiring people in Europe. If you want to get like excellent engineers, you have there excellent universities. So it's quite easy to get a lot of this brain pool that can help you to potentiate your business. And I would say that the problem that we have in Europe is that since we don't look at there, so we don't look at them, when we look at them, it's kind of too late. So they are very busy, playing in the local market. By the time they decide to come to Europe, they are already huge giants such as SmartFit or WellHub.
Okay, very interesting. I remember your colleague Matthias saying in the last episode we talked about that also the market itself, and he meant it in case of Argentina, is very unstable. Yeah, so you cannot really look very far into the future. You have to more like think in months. You have to like, for example, he gives the example that contract about rent is only for a few months. Contract with employees is only for a few months because of the inflation rate that was sometimes so high that you would not do any contract that's longer than a few months. But is that also a thing in Brazil, or is Brazil compared to Argentina more stable and gives though the companies that are there a better stable base to develop on that?
The thing is that I would say, as an Argentinian, most of the countries are more stable than Argentina. So it's not a miracle to say Brazil, big neighbor, is more stable than Argentina. Um, all countries in the regions, and we ourselves make fun of it too. So it's a funny thing to say. Um, what you have in Brazil, so what you have in Argentina is this incredible change the whole time of different political directions and economic measures and this inflation that you said, that makes it for everyone very, very difficult to establish a business and to follow one direction, because with every change, everything moves. Most countries in the region, or many countries in the regions, are way more stable, and particularly in the case of Brazil, it has such a size with such an internal market that it's not so it has its own inflation. So it has problems and struggles as well, but you can plan a bit longer. Yeah, and you don't need to depend on your imports from other countries to do other things. You have there your huge environment, which is, as I said, it doesn't protect you from everything, but it is way more stable than other countries.
Okay, very interesting. We just talked about the big companies from Brazil that are now all over the world and really influencing the worldwide fitness market. But let's take a look at perhaps the big cities there like Sao Paulo and Rio, and look at the startup scene there. Would you say at the moment there is kind of a new boutique concept, a digital platform, or perhaps even a trend that could influence in the future not only the Brazil market, but could be a new export to other countries. So something you should take a look on at the moment?
I would say that because the question was if you should take a look at it. So and then talking about startups, you have a huge dynamic over there because you have a lot of brain and a lot of VCs, investigating and creating new business models, and then, as mentioned before, so you realize in Europe when it's kind of too late because the giant is already coming. We will see which of these very modern concepts will survive and will establish. Was paying attention to which are the latest startups there in Brazil, and literally you can find many different. So it wouldn't be fair to mention one because there are too many that are doing great things. The thing is with the startups, as they are startups, which will survive, and the thing is that when it survives in this market, then it will expand and it will be kind of late. The only thing, so we haven't talked about other players which are here not that well known, but for example, ABC Evo. It's a huge software provider. It belongs now to ABC Fitness, but it's huge software solution that is very established in the Brazilian, but also in the whole Latin American market. So I would say that it's the software provider in Latin America, and they might be moving to Europe quite soon. And this is a solution of a huge size and a lot of expertise, and that is connected with other solutions as well there. You also have a Movement, which is an equipment provider with factories in Brazil, and this is also quite a big player. What I noticed when I was there in Latin America is these solutions, yeah, that I'm mentioning now might not be in Europe, maybe intentionally, but they are already playing a strong role in Mexico, Argentina, Chile, and so on. So they have the exporters and they have their people to do the onboarding. They have everything prepared to live there. I would say that for Europe, whenever it comes, it will be sort of hopefully not too late. It will be an enrichment for the market. But there are many solutions that might come from that region.
Yeah, very interesting. Perhaps let's talk a little bit about the workforce we have in Brazil. Also here, like last time, yeah, when we talked about the other countries around Brazil, I got to know that, yeah, many, of course, looking at other markets, of course, having like perhaps a little bit the dream of getting to a foreign market where you earn more, that also where talents are kind of rewarded higher than perhaps in your own market. Understandable thinking, of course. And but I get a feeling a little bit from everything you said now, it could be different with Brazil. So am I right with that, or do we see a different movement from Brazil, so that we're perhaps not so much looking at to Portugal as we're perhaps kind of from the language, like their native partner in Europe or the other countries in EU, or is it a little bit the same like from the Argentinian and other Latin American markets?
It is similar with strong differences, with categorical differences. So what you have in Argentina is a similar population to Spain, and many people who hold a European passport. So if you want to look for higher salaries, then you move to Spain, and it's not such a big challenge to start there from zero. Speak the language, you know the rules, and you move there. Brazil, once again, is let's say 20 times bigger than Portugal. I don't know now the exact population of Portugal. I've spent a long time in Portugal, and it was interesting to see people were telling me that the children, when they before they go to kindergarten, they learn Brazilian or they speak Brazilian Portuguese, and the parents correct the children, and say, no, this is not how you should speak. You should speak so with these other words from our Portuguese. I know this quite well. In Argentina, our children do speak also before they go to the kindergarten Mexican, because most of the things are translated in that dialect, but without losing the path. What you have there is a huge market with a huge production of content. and lot of people, a lot of talented people with the possibilities to come to Europe to earn higher salaries. So I would say that it's a big different to the Argentinian, also to the Chilean situation in which you will come to eventually a bigger country. This is not the situation of Brazilians who are in this huge market, and moving to Portugal is a bit different. Um, but yeah, it has its similarities. I've been looking at migration statistics from the last years, and literally there are more Brazilians coming to Europe in the last years. But I think that with this whole new way of working, of being able to communicate with people in different time zones, and having no problems in working in Brazil for a Portuguese company, or in Argentina or Latin America for Mexican and US American companies. I think that this might have an excellent an effect on the long term. But I would say that still kind of comparable. Most Brazilians, or many Brazilians, would say coming to Europe is a good and easy way to earn higher salaries. And if you speak already the tongue as in Portugal, it's a way, it's an easy place to start with.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, we see. I think you very much described it in our talk before the podcast in a good way. It's the same but different. Yeah? And I quite get it, the feeling after this talk we had now, yeah, that it is like that. Brazilian market is special. The Brazilian market is very interesting, especially looking at it to see what perhaps can at a later point come to Europe, come to also other international fitness markets, and will influence it marks the fitness market worldwide much. But also I would say it is also some kind of a little bit hidden, and it's still a little bit a market that is not so much in the picture from our European perspective. But perhaps I would say we need to take a closer look. And therefore, we made today the beginning. But like always, in a podcast episode like this, we cannot talk about everything. There's much time missing to really get a fully picture of the market itself. So whoever wants to know more about is, of course, highly invited to either contact to Martin or to Matthias and to Fitlink itself, and also can take a look at the Ibero-American market meeting at the FIBO this year, so where you can meet other people from there and get in contact and get a little bit more to know about it. Yeah, and by that, we get to the end of our podcast today now. To our listeners, like I already said, you can find every information in the show notes. And also, I would like to ask you for a small favor. If you like the episode, please share it to someone who also has to get the information out of it. And also, please review the podcast. You can do it on every platform possible, like Spotify, like Apple Podcasts, like YouTube. Just give it a small review. And I thank you very much already in advance for that. This really helps this podcast to spread wider and get more people in touch with it and with the many information we provide in it. As per our traditions, the final words always belongs to my guest. So, Martin, what message would you like to leave to our listeners at the end of the podcast?
As we were saying, so it's very often that we are not looking there enough. So the markets are there, and the markets are huge. So my suggestion would be to take a look, to interiorize, because many amazing things are happening in this specific market, but also in the whole Latin American context. A good opportunity would be, as you mentioned, with this during the FIBO. When many Latin Americans are coming to get in contact with them, we're also, as you say, staging the Ibero-American Congress with hundreds of representatives from Brazil, from Latin America, from Mexico, Argentina, but also Spain and Portugal. So it's a very practical opportunity to get in contact with yeah, stars of the market, very relevant people who have worked a lot and have a very good knowledge of the market. So it's my invitation goes to everyone who wants to hear what's going on there and start paying attention to these markets, that they are very, very welcome to come to this event and contact us. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. And to everyone out there, see you soon at the next episode of Hashtag Fitness Industry. Bye bye.